Metaverse Insider's interview series. My name is Josh, and in today's episode, we cover part 2 of our conversation with the Chief Product Officer at Aveva, Robert McGreevy. So Rob, to resume our conversation, Aveva recently went through quite a major change in appointing a new CEO, Caspar Herzberg. Could you please shed some light on this?
Yeah. Caspar Herzberg, he's been with us. He's been with us a little over a year now. He's taken over the helm as CEO. His predecessor, our former CEO, Peter Herwick, actually took the next level CEO job. So we actually had two. So our former CEO took the big job at Schneider as CEO of Schneider Electric, and then maintains the chairman of Aveva position. And then Caspar took over in his place. But yeah, that was within the last couple of months.
Fantastic. Well, has this had any impact on Metaverse initiatives at all?
It's always been a part of our strategic direction. So I don't see this as a material change. Caspar is certainly a huge advocate and proponent of the metaverse and of the transformation of the industry at large, as was Peter before him. So strategically, I would say we remain, pretty much focused on this and continuing to support and develop it. So I don't see any material changes in direction, strategy, vision. If anything, we all sort of see the industries rally around this space as a necessity to sort of advancing the industry as a whole moving forward. And so obviously for us as Aveva, we see that as a great opportunity. And so I think Caspar would, if he were on the call, would continue to echo that.
Thank you. That's great to hear. So, speaking of the trajectory and vision, can you please elaborate on what you guys are looking to achieve in the near future, the next year or even the next 5 years? Where would you guys like to be in the industry by that point?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Well, number one, like we've already been doing a lot of this stuff. And so some of the stuff that we do, like the fully immersive operator training and simulation systems that we've been doing for over a decade, that's going to continue. The good news is the technologies in like laser scanning facilities and building the building blocks of some of these fully immersive environments has gotten more cost effective. But I would say the first thing is we're going to continue what we started. That's probably sort of step number one. The other thing I would say for this year is the foundational layer for all of this stuff remains data. And so the amount of sort of data gravity that we continue to sort of manage and maintain on behalf of the industry and the customers, that's a big focus for us. So I would say for us, aside from continuing what we already started, data point number one is continuing to capture and collect and organize the industry's industrial information to form the basis of that digital twin. Because no matter what you believe or don't believe about the metaverse, it's predicated on having access to contextually relevant process, production, design, engineering information, just like full stop. So that's a big emphasis for us. And we've got hundreds of customers that are building their digital twins on Aveva technology. Customers like Yinson and many others, I'm sure we can share with you. So that's, I would say, priority number one for a lot of customers is getting their data in order, because without that, it's hard to do much else that's meaningful, I would say. Step two in that is the assembly of the industry specificity, right? The industry specific applications or the behaviors that I talked about earlier. That is, how do we digitize work processes? How do we digitize product changeovers, scheduled downloads, maintenance inspections and rounds? So, and in parallel, while building out that digital twin and data storage, we'll build out the behavioral aspects, right? The action items or the verbs, if you like, of this metaverse and how those things transcend the value chain. And then the third piece I would say, and again, it's also in parallel with data, is the visualization piece. How do people want to visualize these things? And so we've already released last year, we released a couple new visual components where you can actually explore this sort of space. So over the next 12 months, we're going to release incremental updates that provide viewing our 1D, 2D, 3D, and real-time data all in the same visual space. We'll also have a revised update of our 3D rendering services, which is part of the graphical engine that we've got, and I would say enhanced support for mobile devices, tablets, etc. So we do a lot of that stuff today, but it only gets a lot better and a lot richer in the years to come. So yeah, like the headline for us is over the next 12 months, you'll see more data, more of the digital twin, more of that operational, pieces of the digital twin, the behavioral, if you like, and then that visual layer that sort of sits on top. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. Like for us, it's just incremental bricks towards the metaverse, right? Like we got the data foundations, we've been doing it forever. We got some of the domain specificity. We even have some of the visual components. All we keep doing is just bringing them together closer and closer as we move towards this fully immersive and integrated environment.
That's really exciting news, I have to say. It's quite a thrill. I really enjoy speaking about the industrial metaverse. It's going to impact everything. I don't think people truly understand to what extent this will impact the world, yet alone the metaverse as a whole.
No, I agree, and it's funny. Like I was with Microsoft and some customers actually a couple of days ago in Seattle, in Redmond actually, and we were just showing some concepts to exactly this, some customers just to help sort of punctuate and illustrate that, and just seeing some of this stuff actually helps people kind of connect the dots between what's real and what's not, because so much of what's out there around metaverse I think is it's from the gaming perspective, right? It's like the Fortnite world, or the, pick your your specific, I would say, social or entertainment, right? There's been a lot of noise around those spaces. I think it's fairly well understood, but in industrial, we've been showing people examples of this more, and then they sort of light up when they see it. It's really quite interesting. Have we showed you guys any of this stuff before on what we actually do and how this works? I'm just curious.
No, we haven't, but we would love to see anything that you wish to share with us.
Yeah, well, let me do that. Actually, let me show you if you got, by the way, how are you on time? Do you guys have a couple minutes to overrun?
No worries, we're good for time.
If you don't mind, we will send you some proper stuff. But just while I've got you, let me just show you a couple things just to kind of punctuate some of these points. I don't usually show software in interviews, but so look, just to give you an idea of kind of what we actually do, just to connect those dots that I described earlier. So one of the things that we do is, like, we operate in these industrial environments, right? These are typical plants and sites. And one of the first things that we do is we actually allow you to digitize these environments. So we have a thing called laser scanning, right? You're probably familiar with 3D laser scans, where you can walk into an existing facility, scan it, and then that builds a 3D point cloud, which is the geometry and the physical sort of nature of this space. So we actually do all that stuff in two fronts. One is for like brownfield. So if the place, building already exists, we scan it and we load it. And then in greenfield, if people are building a new offshore oil rig or a platform or a power plant, they use our design tools. And that sort of forms the basis of that sort of 3D, sort of model. And that's sort of one piece of it. The other piece of this is the behavioral piece I mentioned earlier. So we run fully high fidelity simulation models. These are actually the actual process production control system that runs a facility. So this isn't like a simulation in the sense of like a gaming thing. It's literally like, this is how a thermodynamic process behaves, like in situ. And so what we actually are able to do is take our models and line those directly up with equipment types and equipment. And so here's a case where, like, in a fully immersive trainer, we're able to say, hey, look, if you turn this valve to this position on this particular piece of equipment, this will be the actual outcome. And it's not a simulated thing in a gaming sense. It's literally tied to a production control process. And it's pretty exciting. And we can actually run scenarios against this, like, okay, let's simulate a fire. So what do you do, Mr. or Mrs. Operator, as the fire? Like, do you get this gear? Do you use this kind of fire extinguisher? Should you shut this valve or that valve off? So it becomes actually super cool and super interesting. And it sort of ties together the physical and the digital world. The other piece, as I mentioned, is remote field workers. And so what we see a lot of times is that the remote workers are sort of, they phone a friend. And so the in situ field workers that may be out in a solar array or a wind farm, they're out there experiencing this equipment on site on-prem, and then they can call back to a NOC, a network operations center, where they're basically getting help. But the teams are tethered by this digital twin, by this sort of metaverse, because they're operating off the same view of the equipment in the field and back at the headquarters. And it's really, it's just super cool to see these things sort of start to come to life. And then, of course, on the tablet side, the other place that we see this is like in situ in field. So if I take a tablet and point it at this pump or this piece of piping, the augmented reality is the part where I actually can overlay on this pump or this valve the right place to look. Here's the bolt you should turn. Here's the steam trap that you should inspect. And that sort of, again, becomes a great way to sort of tether the digital and the physical world together. And so that's what we've actually been doing. And to give you one last quick look, and then I promise I'll stop showing you software, but we've actually just to give you an idea of how these sort of digital, the sort of the 3D and the real-time world come together. What we've been doing, and we actually announced this at our conference, I think I don't know, maybe October. But you think about the digital in the metaverse and this idea of an asset. So if I want to search for a pump, let's call it J900. What I can do is just go into this environment, type J900, just like you would in like Google or Bing or whatever your search is, and then that sort of returns back to you. Okay, here's the pump, and here's its pressure, flow rate, vibration, et cetera, like the real-time piece of that digital twin, if you like, or that sort of metaverse. And then the other thing we've added is the ability to pull up the three-dimensional asset pieces of it. So now you're able to switch to J900, and here's that 3D pump. Like that's the either laser scan version or the actual schematic version of this thing, kind of like live and in living color, if you like. Basically the teams or the people can basically explore this like in a real fully immersive view. So I've got the real-time signals. Here's the 3D piece of it. And then if I need more information, you can literally click and actually link into like process and instrumentation, P&IDs, equipment. So here's J900, the pump, like literally the actual diagrams for that. That's all sort of pulled from the same environment. And it becomes like, another sort of view of that sort of fully immersive world. And then the last piece I got is point cloud. I mentioned this earlier, but you can laser scan an existing facility. So now it's like, hey, let's go explore pump 900 in where it lives in a facility that may be 1,000 miles away. And so now here's J900, and I can look, okay, if I got to replace this, I need a ladder or a scaffold or like, you know what I mean? It helps you plan work in the field. So anyways, this stuff kind of goes on, and we can share this with you. But I just thought I'd give you some like examples of how this is like actually real stuff that's going on in the real world in the industrial metaverse. It's not like fake demo stuff. Like this is production grade software, and it just keeps getting better and better. Like we add in more data sources, and we add in more models, and we add in more visualization. So anyways, I'm super passionate about this topic. So I thought I'd share a few visual things. Does that help at all with connecting the dots?
This is fascinating. It's really difficult to be able to conceptualize these ideas and come up with mental maps on how it will plan out. So thank you for sharing this with us. It's incredible how you guys are able to effectively streamline entire processes across all industries using this technology.
Yeah, there's some great cases, by the way, too. I think Jensen is one that there's a bunch, but comes to mind. They just did a piece with us. I think it's on our website. If not, it will be soon, where they're really ahead of the curve. Jensen does these big old FPSOs. If you're familiar, they're these enormous ships that are like floating cities that basically do like all in one shop, pumping, refining, and they're just amazingly complicated. It's like they got all the complexities of a city on a boat with a plant, and they've fully digitized the whole thing. And it's actually quite cool to see what they're doing on it. But anyway, if any of that stuff's helpful, I'm sure Priscilla or I can kind of follow up with some more of these things. But hopefully that's helpful.
Absolutely. I'm always excited to explore any visuals or materials you can share with us. Visual representation not only enhances comprehension, but also allows our readers to vividly grasp the concepts at hand. While reading about something provides a certain level of understanding, witnessing it firsthand adds a whole new dimension. This truly exemplifies the progress made by companies like yours in advancing the industry, and it sheds light on its still relatively hidden nature for the majority of people. It's truly refreshing to witness this advancement firsthand. Well, that's a wrap for part 2 of our conversation with Rob McGreevy, the Chief Product Officer at Aveva. Be sure to stay tuned for weekly updates in the industry and content covering all things Metaverse. Follow the Metaverse Insider on Twitter and LinkedIn, and visit metaverseinsider.tech for all our content. Thank you for joining us. Until next time.